Welcome to the Ask Phil Skinny podcast with a guest. I'm proud to present Andrew. Andrew, please tell us more about yourself. What is your story?
Absolutely. So my name is Andrew Giancola, and I am the host of the Personal Finance Podcast and a number of other shows. But my story is a very interesting one. And kind of where I started was my entire goal was to learn how to manage my money. And when I started my first job out of college, I realized pretty quickly that I have no idea how to actually manage my money. I knew how to invest, and I kind of got started investing as a teenager. I was just lucky to be interested in this subject, but I didn't know how to manage money. And in fact, my first job that I ever had, I actually only made 30,000 US dollars per year. And so right now, anybody living in the US knows that that's really not a lot of money to get started with, especially with the cost of living in the United States. And so I realized very, very quickly that when I started this new job, I am living paycheck to paycheck, meaning every single dollar that I make has to go back out to bills. And so very quickly, I realized I need to solve this problem. I need to solve it fast. And there was a moment in time when I was driving to work and I went to go fill up my gas tank, and I didn't have enough money to even fill up my tank of gas completely. And I vowed at that moment in time to say to myself, hey, I need to change my entire financial situation because this is not going to work going forward. And I'm not going to let this work going forward. So instead, I want to transform my financial life. So I decided to do a number of different things. And the first thing I did was realize, okay, well, I don't make much money, but let's see if we can cut back in some of these different areas. So I looked at how much I was spending in different areas and decided to just cut back a little bit and see if I could, save some money. So I did that. But secondly, then I realized, well, the bigger problem here is how much money I am making. So I focused my time and attention, as much of it as possible, on increasing my income, the amount of money that I was making over this time frame. And once I did this, everything changed for me because I was increasing the difference between my expenses and my income. And we call this the gap. And the gap is where you can build wealth. The gap is where wealth is built. And if you take that difference between your income and expenses and put it towards investments or put it towards wealth building activities, you can absolutely change your life forever. So I started to do this, and I would focus my time and energy on increasing my income. So I went to my boss and I said, hey, I want to learn how to make more money here, and I want to become a productive employee to you. How can I do that? And we went through this 6-month process so that I could earn more money and get promoted. Then I went and started some side businesses, and I would sell things on Amazon. I would sell things on eBay. I had a side of the road Christmas tree stand where we would sell live Christmas trees to people during Christmas time. I had a bunch of other side hustles and side businesses that I started to try to increase the amount of money that I was making over this time frame. And so it kept increasing, and it was absolutely fantastic. And eventually, I was able to actually leave my job and start investing in real estate. So I started investing in real estate and started to grow that portfolio, eventually sold that portfolio, then started investing into businesses and growing a portfolio of businesses. I sold one recently in October. And so now we are here. And in 2020, I decided, okay, COVID just hit. I'm going to start a podcast and I want to help people with their finances because this is the information that I needed when I first got started. And so I started a show called the Personal Finance Podcast. Very boring name, but really fun concept in the way that we do this. And so when we started that show, we started to teach people how to become wealthy. And our goal was to create 1 million millionaires. That was the original goal that we kind of talked through. And it was a fun initial goal that we're still working through right now. And so once we started that process, all of a sudden the show started to grow a little more and a little more and a little more. And now we are at the point where it's just one of the coolest things that we get to do every single day and one of the most fun parts of our journey. And so that's my journey in a nutshell. That's kind of where I got started in this whole entire process. And I know I've been all over the place here, but this is one of those things that I think is really cool because I believe anybody in this world can build wealth and they can truly change their financial life and get financial freedom. That's our ultimate goal is we want people to achieve financial freedom.
Amazing. I really like how you put it and how you started with the first job and the gas money transformation.
Yes.
I see that a lot, or like paying telephone bill or something like that. It usually or rent, something like that sparks the okay. I have to do and change something about it. How much would you estimate that your bringing up was or influenced how you perceived money
That,
when you started?
That's a wonderful question. And I think your upbringing is a huge impact on how you think about money and how you treat money. And it had a huge impact on me. And it also had a number of different things that kind of were positive, and there was a few things that were negative. So some of the positive things were my parents were savers. My parents were middle class. They didn't make much money. My mom was a teacher, and then she became a principal at some point in time. My dad owned a business, and then he kind of worked in the corporate world for a little while as well. And so my upbringing was just normal middle class lifestyle, where there was a lot of things that I go back and look, and I realize I am the way that I am today is because of my upbringing, where we never really got extra money on hand. So, like, if we wanted some spending money or anything like that, we never really got it. We had to go out and earn that extra money. And so, this became something where once I hit that gas pump moment, I realized, oh, I got to go out and earn it. I got to go out and earn my spot. What's not going to be handed to me. Nobody's going to give me more money. I need to go figure out how to earn it. And so that's one way that my upbringing actually impacted me. But it impacted me in a couple of other ways as well. Like I've seen this with my own kids right now, where Christmas time would roll around, for example, and we didn't have much money at Christmas. So we would get like a small amount of presents every year at Christmas, which is still absolutely amazing. But during that time frame, I remember kind of going back and thinking, and now that my first son, when he was born, I used to give him way too many gifts during the holidays. And the reason for that was because I felt like I wanted to have more gifts, during my upbringing. And so I've seen that time and time again where my wife's like, hey, you got to stop spending all this money on him. And so I realized and reined it back in. I have 3 kids now. And so we have like a whole system that we put into place for that. But there are things like that with my upbringing that I know impact my psychology and the way that I treat money. But my parents were always folks who really believed in me, and they really believed in my ideas. And so I generate so many different ideas when it comes to business, and I generate so many different ideas when it comes to the way that I think about things. And they always, always, always push me to try to pursue those ideas. And I think that has been some of the biggest impact on me overall and the way that I handle money. And so their upbringing was definitely a fantastic impact on me. And there are other small things like the Christmas example where I know it probably negatively impacted me.
Okay, so how would you estimate that an average American or average listener can change their ways? Because a lot of people that when they talk about money, they believe there's nothing they can do. They feel stuck, and they believe that they need to um, become a lottery winner or rob a bank or something to change where they're stuck at. What's your take on that? Is it really applicable to everyone? Are there people that cannot be helped? Are there people that can do it easier than others? Can you talk a bit about that?
Here's an amazing stat that's going to change everybody's perspective. 79% of millionaires out there never received an inheritance once, and 79% of millionaires are self-made millionaires. Now, why is this amazing? This is a beautiful statistic because this shows that anybody can do this. Anybody can build wealth going forward, and you just need to understand and know exactly what to do next. So we have this system in place that we talk through called the Wealth Builder's Journey. And the Wealth Builder's Journey is basically a system that we put together that shows you step by step exactly what to do with your next dollar. I'm going to kind of summarize parts of it here because I want you guys to understand exactly how you can do this as well, because these are some of the things that I did when I was coming up that helped me realize, oh my goodness, you can absolutely build wealth. You just got to know what to do. And nobody teaches you this stuff. They don't teach it in schools, which is just such a shame. And it's something that you really need to understand. So the first thing I tell people to do is first, we need to figure out exactly where you stand with your dollars. And so if you're working at a day job or whatever else, we need to first protect ourselves. And so the number one starting point is to figure out, okay, how much do I make every single month? And once you understand how much you make every single month, you need to save that amount of money in a savings account. That is your first goal. And the reason for this is, let's say you make $5,000 in a month. Well, if you make $5,000 in a month, we need $5,000 in a high yield savings account or some sort of savings account. This is going to protect us that when anything happens in life, if your car breaks down, your house has an issue, or anything else, we are going to have 1 month of expenses in place. Once you have that in place, this is not the end of saving money. It's just the starting point. It's a small starting point to get the ball rolling on the next steps. Then we need to look at ourselves and say, okay, do we have some debt? Do we have credit card debt out there? Do we have debt when it comes to anything that's high interest? And so we classify high interest debt as anything above a 6% interest rate. Well, anything above a 6% interest rate is going to be something that you want to pay off as fast as you possibly can. And the reason for this is because Usually, some people are like, well, I'm not going to pay off my debt. Instead, I'm going to invest the money because you can do better off investing. Well, if you have a 6% interest rate, a lot of different investments aren't going to get that rate of return. So you're much better off paying anything above a 6% interest rate off. So a lot of folks, for example, in the US, come up with consumer debt. So credit card debt is a big example, or a personal loan. Maybe you had buy now, pay later, and all of a sudden it shifted over, and now you have to pay off that buy now, pay later loan. Or maybe it's a car loan or something else where you have high interest debt on there. Those need to get paid off next. And then we move on to the step three, which is thinking through the second part of your emergency fund. So we have something called the 1-3-6 method. You heard us talk about 1 month at the top, which is number one. But then we want to save 3 months of expenses in a high yield savings account. This is going to help us as a stepping stone to make sure that anything that happens to us in life, maybe we have a medical emergency, maybe our car breaks down, maybe the water heater in our house blows, any of those types of things, if that happens to you, you'll be able to have cash on hand to cover it. Most people who stay in the paycheck to paycheck cycle, or most people who stay broke, the reason why they stay broke is they don't have cash on hand to protect their finances. Cash is a protection to help you make sure that anything that happens to you in life, and we all know bad things happen to us in life, but anytime something happens in life, you have the money just there to protect yourself. Okay. So we have those different steps in place. And once we have that 3-month emergency fund, now we can start investing. And there's a number of different places to get started investing. But you can start investing in the market. Maybe you want to invest in real estate. It depends on where you are in the country or in the world. But you can get started investing. And once you get started, it'll absolutely transform and change your life. Why? Because once you start investing your money, that is when you're buying your freedom. And that's what money is there to do. Money is a tool to get you your freedom. It's not to buy stuff. It's not to buy designer stuff. It's not to have the midlife crisis where you're going out and buying the brand new fancy sports car. Sure, it could absolutely do that. And we want you to spend more on things that you love. But this is more so the area where we want you to use money as a tool to buy your freedom. And so once you start investing, we want you to split kind of half of it towards investing and half of it towards your emergency fund, which is the cash that you're saving up every single month until you get to 6 months. Now, 6 months is the minimum that we want you to have in that savings account. And the reason why we say 6 months as a minimum instead of like a lot of other people out there will say 3 months or 2 months, the reason why we say 6 months is if you lose your job, that is the big thing you want to protect against, because if you lose your job, then you at least have 6 months of expenses saved up so you can go find another job that suits your situation. Then beyond that, then we're investing in a bunch of different accounts and going through the process of thinking through, well, do we want to invest in our kids or anything else, and starting to build wealth that way. But that is the foundation, and that is how we get people started when it comes to managing their money.
Interesting. What's your take on 401k? Should we put this, is that the investment money for the 401k, or could we put some of our liquidity money, as you call it, 136, into 401k?
So the 401k is a fantastic place to start. So once we get to the investment level, that is where we start to invest in the 401k. And I would highly recommend first that people get the 401k match. So if your employer offers a match, this is a typically 100% rate of return. You can't get a better return than this. And so a lot of times I highly recommend getting the 401k match. Then after that, once you start that process, then you can start investing in things like the Roth IRA and your 401k and a taxable brokerage account. And it kind of depends on where you are and where you stand currently. But for me specifically, for most people, we like the Roth IRA, then the 401k, and then back to the traditional brokerage account. And so that is the order of operations and the way that we think about this, because it is a very, very powerful way to invest your dollars. Why? Because the 401k money goes in that has not been taxed yet. It grows tax-free, and you can pull the money out. And when you pull the money out, you'll get tax on those dollars based on the tax rate in retirement. So let's say, for example, that you are making $100,000 per year while you're working. Well, if you're working and you make $100,000 per year, maybe you want to put money in a 401k, and you're not going to pay taxes on the dollars that you put in the 401k. Then down the line, you do a really good job. You have a couple $1,000,000 in retirement. And once you retire, you want to start drawing down and pulling money out of that 401k so that you can live on the money in retirement. Well, once you start to do that, it is going to be pulled out at the tax rate that you have in the future. So if you do not have a job in the future and you're not really making a lot of money, your tax rate is going to be much lower than when you were making $100,000 per year in your working years. And so this is why the 401k is powerful, because it is a retirement account that helps you reduce your overall tax bill here in the US. And that is why people love it.
Okay. Now I would like your take on life insurance. and medical insurance and disability insurance. What's your take on that? What do you recommend in these areas?
Perfect. So, first, when it comes to life insurance is one that there is a lot of false information out there when it comes to this. The life insurance that we typically talk about is called term life insurance. This is the cheapest life insurance that you can get. And the only time you want to get term life insurance is if someone who is in your family depends on you, or someone who is a business partner depends on you, or something like that. If somebody depends on your income, the amount of money that you're making every single year, then you want to get life insurance. And term life insurance is one of the best options out there. For someone who is in their 30s or 40s or 50s, you can get term life insurance for such an inexpensive rate. I've seen rates out there where someone's getting $500,000 in life insurance and they're in their 40s and it's like 35, $40 a month. So it's really an inexpensive way to make sure that you get life insurance coverage. Now, the way term life insurance works is it's for a specific term. This is why it's so cheap. So let's say you're 45 years old and you go out and buy some term life insurance. Well, you buy it from 45 to say age 60. Well, the thought process here is that by 45 to 60, you're trying to make sure that you have enough coverage in place. And by the time you turn age 60, you want to have that nest egg in place so that your family is covered and you already have money on hand in your retirement accounts or wherever else. But the term coverage is going to cover you during that time frame when you feel as though you're going to need this if something were to ever happen to you. There are a bunch of other life insurance policies and products out there. You hear things like universal life insurance, where people try to position them as investments. In our opinion, life insurance is never an investment. It is always just insurance. It's supposed to just cover you. And so that's why we talk about term insurance. A lot of these other policies are going to benefit the person selling it to you more than the person who is actually taking on the policy. And so this is really, really important to note. A lot of advisors out there, financial advisors, will say, hey, you need this life insurance policy. But what's really happening is they're making a huge commission on those dollars. And so you want to make sure that you understand the policy completely and look at the fees. Now, the second one that you asked about was health insurance. I think everybody needs health insurance. It is one that covers you because you have no idea what's going to happen to your health, and surprises can happen at any given time. In the US, it is so incredibly expensive to carry life insurance or to carry health insurance right now. And it is one of those things that most people need to make sure that they are shopping around. Shop your health insurance around. If your employer offers it, that's fantastic. Usually you get a discount if your employer offers it. If they don't, you want to make sure that you have health insurance coverage that really can cover enough for you and your family. Now, a second thing you could do is get high deductible health insurance, and then you use something like an HSA. So an HSA is one of the best accounts out there, and it's actually a surprise retirement account, but it's called the health savings account. The way the health savings account works is that money goes in tax-free. You can actually invest the money and it can grow tax-free, and you can pull it out tax-free as long as you have a qualified medical expense. Well, this is a beautiful option for a lot of folks out there, especially when they want to grow their wealth, because you can utilize this as a secret retirement account. But in addition, if you have a high deductible health plan and insurance, you can also use the HSA to cover some of those expenses. And then disability, like you mentioned, is a great one as well. Disability is something that is going to cover your income. If you were ever to get injured or hurt, you just need to make sure that you have the right disability policy and understand exactly how it works, understand how much coverage is in place. A lot of workplaces will offer disability insurance, and you got to check the policy and make sure that you understand how the policy works. I would highly recommend with a disability policy for a lot of folks out there, you can take it and put it into something like Claude or ChatGPT or whatever else, and it'll read the policy for you and kind of help you understand some of this stuff, and you can start to ask it questions. That's going to really help a lot of folks out there when it comes to these complicated policies where they don't really understand them or they just want to make sure that it works for their specific situation. That's a great way to look deeper into it.
Okay, we covered all the, let's say, the basis right now. Now I would like to push you more into the um, popular and theories and stuff like that. We
Sure.
all know Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad. How are you with his stance? Because his stance becomes more and more, let's call it aggressive lately.
Yes.
Because you're much more conservative when you say savings first and then invest, and of course insurance, and that is conservative. That is how we were taught to do it. But what about Robert Kiyosaki? He claims that you have to borrow money to make money and stuff like that. What's your take on his position?
So here's the great thing about Robert Kiyosaki. Is Robert Kiyosaki, one of the first books I ever read when it came to finance was Rich Dad Poor Dad. And Rich Dad Poor Dad changed my life and it changed my perspective about money and the way that I thought about money. But I have been through the ringer and the gauntlet of exactly what he taught, going and buying businesses with debt or going and buying real estate with debt. And you can absolutely do that. If the numbers work, especially real estate, if the numbers work, you can absolutely go out and do that. And there's a number of phenomenal ways to buy real estate where you don't have to put a lot of money down. I think it's a great option. And especially what I did with real estate was I actually didn't even go into debt. I actually found a business partner who was willing to put up the money. And I was the person who was going to do all the work. So I would go in there and I would find the people who were going to rent the property. I would go find all the properties and buy the properties. I would go run the numbers on all the properties. I would make sure the renovations were going well. I'd manage the contractors, those types of things. And I owned 20% of each property. And the person who had all the money owned 80% of each property. And so when we did that, that's a great way to get started where you don't have to go into debt. Instead, you can have a partner in place and start to learn the basics and learn the ropes. Then as that partnership evolves, you can own more and more of a percentage of these properties. And eventually you're going to be making enough money where you can start to buy your own properties. That's a great place to start. So you're not going into debt. Instead, you are getting the ball rolling and getting started. But I have done it with businesses as well. And I can tell you when things go the wrong direction or when they don't go the right way, it is very, very stressful to hold the bag when it comes to this. So a great example of this is Dave Ramsey. So if you've ever heard of Dave Ramsey, he is one of the leading voices in the finance world. And I think he has the number one podcast in the business category right now. And when you look at Dave Ramsey, in his 20s, he used to buy a bunch of real estate. He first became a millionaire in real estate, but he had all of this debt on the real estate. And eventually, there was a big recession that happened. And when the recession happened in the 80s, the banks all called on his loans and he had to try to pay back all those loans. And he actually had to file bankruptcy in his 20s because of this. And this is why he is so big on not having debt, is because of that reason. Now, I'm not saying don't have debt. I think there's good debt and there's bad debt. And I think Robert Kiyosaki is kind of right in the middle, but he's extra aggressive. Whereas for me specifically, I like to evaluate it situation by situation and run the numbers. The numbers are going to tell you everything. And if you have a lot of cushion in some sort of deal, I think it's worth every penny to kind of take on that risk.
Okay, so if because we're addressing midlifers, what's your number one advice for midlifers that are starting to get, let's say, the taste of they need to do something about their financial situation? Uh, where should they start? What is the number one thing they should do if they want to change their, let's call it, financial position?
The number one thing they should do is first, focus on your income. If you're not making enough money in order to get started investing, focus on growing that income because you still have a lot of time left. And once you focus on growing that income, you can take those extra dollars and put them towards wealth building activities. Now, what are wealth building activities? These are things that are going to help you buy your freedom. So buying things like index funds and ETFs in the stock market, for example, or buying stocks or whatever else, you need to get started today so that you can start to grow your wealth for the future. Because I can tell you right now, nobody is going to come to save you. You need to get the ball rolling right now. And for a lot of folks out there, maybe you're struggling through, a midlife crisis or something like that. Let me tell you what to do right now. So every time you get an increase with your income, and say you get a raise at work, and a lot of you are probably making more money than you ever have in the middle of your life. And so when you get a raise at work, here's what I recommend a lot of people do. Maybe you want to enjoy life, but you also want to have that balance of buying your freedom and putting money towards your financial future. Well, we call this the 50-50 rule. Take 50% of your money that you make and put it towards, things that you want to do and things that you want to enjoy. So if you got a $10,000 raise this year, I'm going to do this for easy math, then you can take 5,000 of it, put it towards your vacations, put it towards your fun time, put it towards all those extra things, and take the other 5,000 and put it towards your investments, put it in your 401k or your Roth IRA or your investment account. This is going to create a balance in life where you can truthfully, absolutely transform your financial life because you still have a lot of time for compound interest to work. And the compound interest is the amount of money that your money is making. And so over time, you're going to see this growth happen where it'll absolutely transform your life and it is going to change your life forever. But focus on your income, growing that income. And then once you grow that income, take the extra dollars and put them towards wealth building activities to grow your wealth.
Andrew, thank you for all these insights. Before we finish, where can our listeners and viewers find you?
Thank you so much for having me here. You can find me on any podcast player. We are the Personal Finance Podcast on any podcast player. We're on social media at Master Money Co. And if anybody wants to dive deeper into these financial situations, we have something called Master Money Academy, where I help people every single week learn how to manage their money. And we give you this step-by-step system that we're talking about here. You just go to joinmastermoneyacademy.com.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for being my guest tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.